Gamers and Degens, you are listening to the 100X podcast, where both gaming and crypto somehow collide in a beautiful moment. We have really a legend in and of itself, Justin Gary, joining us. If you're coming from the regular gaming world, you probably know who Justin is. Do you want to introduce yourself and what you have built and been working on?
Sure. Yeah, man. I'm very excited to be here. I have been in the gaming industry for 25 or so years. I started off as a Magic the Gathering US national champion when I was 17 years old. I have since parlayed that into being able to work on some of the biggest brands in the world, like Marvel, DC, World of Warcraft. I launched my own company with a deck building game, Ascension, which we are now almost at our 15-year anniversary. And the project I'm very excited to talk about, and there's a lot of other games I've worked on, but the one I'm most excited to talk about is SolForge Fusion, which I actually got to work with the creator of Magic the Gathering, Richard Garfield, and we co-created this game, which we're calling the world's first hybrid deck game, which exists as a tabletop game with algorithmically generated one-of-a-kind decks that can be scanned into a Web2 game where you can play the entire experience in Web2, both against other players as well as in an algorithmically generated campaign, and Web3, which allows you to take those decks and turn them into NFTs and trade them and participate in a growing community across the world.
Fantastic, man. I think just if I'm existing as a Web3, that's such a weird term, but a Web3 or a crypto gamer, and I'm seeing these games pop up, people creating things that I really want to see take gaming to the next evolution. If somebody told me that at some point the highest ranked Magic the Gathering player and the creator of Magic the Gathering himself collabed to create a game that was going to exist in our space, that would have blown my mind a couple of years ago. And so I think, dude, as soon as your team reached out, I was like, no, we got to have this conversation. Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100X. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Let me tell you about our friends at games.gg. And when I say friends, I really do mean that they are friends of 100X. Their CEO, Omar, was one of my first introductions to Web3 gaming, and we're OG holders of their Gamers Lobby collection. We love these guys. They're essentially the super app of Web3 gaming. One of the cool things they've cooked up is a gaming quest system. You complete free quests for cool games, anything from retweeting a post to beating a mission in a new game, and then you get rewards, tokens, skins, whitelist access, all kinds of things. Currently, they have active quests for Boss Fighters, Space Mavericks, and the Game Awards 2024. Go slam those quests for free at games.gg right now. Let's talk about Reactor, a proof-of-work blockchain that introduces a brand new economic model, deep-in mining software, a gaming distribution platform, the RKR token, and their game, Minions of Steel, that's proving their thesis by seamlessly integrating proof-of-work token mining with gaming. Through allowing players to mine with their own GPU while playing, not only do they essentially make gaming free, they make software free, and they present an AI-proof income for everyone. If you want to take a glimpse into the future and get there early, explore Reactor's ecosystem at the link below.
Yeah, it's something I'm really excited about. Richard and I, we actually first started working together back in 2011, and it's a fun story to sort of tell because I started off, as I mentioned, as a pro Magic player, and that's what kind of got me out of my path. I was going to be stuck as a lawyer and not really happy with my life.
That's crazy. From lawyer to card game.
I literally dropped out of law school after throwing my back out while reading. I was so miserable. I just didn't, but Magic created that space to transform my life. And so then when I created and launched my company and launched Ascension, I went to a talk and Richard was giving a talk. And of course he's, the legend. So of course I was going to listen to him do his talk. And he, at the end of the talk, somebody in the Q&A said, "Hey, what's your favorite game right now?" And he said, "Ascension, my game." And I jump up for joy, like a kid, woohoo, in the back of the line. And so it was, everybody laughs at me, but whatever, it gave me my opportunity. And I went and started talking with Richard, and we talked for 3 hours, and we both wanted to make the same game, which at the time was the original version of SolForge, which was the first digital trading card game made native for digital. And so we evolved the industry, took the core games that we know and love and brought it to mobile and tablets and things that didn't exist before. And then now we're doing the exact same thing with the new version of SolForge, SolForge Fusion, to bring it to not just bringing a great game to Web3, but this kind of game that lives across tabletop and Web2 and Web3. Just again, take the same core gameplay that we love and then see what technology allows us to do to present that in new ways and reach more people and create a new experience that's still familiar.
Fantastic, man. I have a question just on, you're a game creator. It's what you do. on TCGs themselves, it definitely feels like, not just in Web3, just worldwide, TCGs are feeling like an oversaturated market. Someone releases one, it gets really cool. I buy a bunch of cards, and then 2 years later, there's no more support because it couldn't maintain a player base. It feels a little bit more wild in Web3 because I think it's a little bit easier maybe to make a solely digital game that you don't have to print the cards and you don't have to get people together in person to play. And so it's, I don't know, it's easier to make it. And then there's so many of them that all of a sudden they die out left and right. How are you guys going to survive in what feels like an oversaturated market?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, right? And I think the core of a trading card game experience, as opposed to a more traditional board game experience, is that there's a greater expectation of content and community, right? And so the start has to be always the same, which is the core game has to be great. And there are many, many games that people put out there. Let's be honest, they are not great. Honestly, most of them suck, right? People think, there's like there's this phenomenon when somebody like watches a movie or like plays a game and they're like, oh, I could totally make it better than that, right? And the truth is, like, I've spent 20 years perfecting this craft. Richard has spent like 40 years doing it, right? It is the kind of thing that takes a lot of work and a lot of expertise. So if the game is not great, then all of the like hype and marketing and blah in the world is not going to save you. And so step one, the game has to be great, but that's not enough, right? There are plenty of terrible games that die, but there are some great games that die too. And the second piece is community, right? You need to be able to continuously support a great community. And that means both having, events and tournaments. It means being able to have continuous content releases, so there's constantly new stuff going on. It means listening and participating, as we do with sort of actively in the Discord. Or I just got back from Gen Con, which is the largest gaming convention in the US, and we had events there and interacted with our community and did a world championships. We do storyline events where actually you take your unique deck and participate in the storyline event, which changes the course and the lore of our world, which also changes which cards show up in future sets. And because SolForge Fusion is unlike traditional trading card games in that we have a digital, unique, one-of-a-kind, algorithmically generated deck. And so if you participate in a storyline event, and you can actually see this stuff at solforgefusion.com and just click on story, you can see that the decks, the NFTs and the collectibles of the deck have the story attached to it that we custom write that's permanently connected to that deck. And so we really think a lot about what's going to draw a bunch of different people into the game and create a community that supports them. Some people care about tournaments and want to play in high-level tournaments. Some people care about the lore and the world and the story. Some people want to just have fun experiences. While we created this algorithmically generated campaign mode, you don't even have to play against another human. You could just have this experience of battling bosses, and we're constantly throwing in new content and upgrades and level up your deck and have that feeling of progression. And so we've put at least as much thought into how we build a sustainable community and create things that are appealing to a wide range of players as we did into making a great game. And I think those two things are critical to anything that's going to be a sustainable long-term success, especially in a category, as you mentioned, as crowded as trading card games.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it there in that, hey, what makes you guys able or capable of surviving in a market that is oversaturated? Well, you're not like all of the other ones in some pretty key different ways. I've never seen anybody handle evolving decks like you guys have. Traditionally, all of the focus is on like specific cards, not on entire decks. That is in and of itself completely unique. And then I've never seen anyone implement a game with 3 ways to play that actually cross over with each other. That Web2, digitally, Web3, digitally, and physically. I think you guys are doing some really unique stuff. I want to talk about a little bit just the game loop itself, the way that playing actually works, because right now we're talking maybe like top-down view. The game itself, what does a match look like? You mentioned there's 2 ways traditionally to play that campaign, which is actually the only way I've played so far. I've never played against another person. I have beat my first campaign, but I've only played a campaign so far. So there's the solo, and then there's playing against other people. What does the game loop itself look like?
So this is the heart of the whole thing, right? And I'm glad that you identified this, right? Because we've talked a lot about the kind of peripherals and like what's cool about the way we're executing it and the technology and how this all goes. But the heart of the game is the same regardless of how you play it, right? Regardless of whether you play against opponents in tabletop and at our Gen Con World Championships or online, or you play in the campaign. And that is, you have a deck of cards that is unique to you. And the way you kind of build your deck is you take 2 unique decks and you shuffle them together. And all of your cards start at level 1. And whenever you can pick a card out of your hand and play it, any one of your 5 cards, you play it into a lane if it's a creature, and that card levels up. And what that means is you'll get a higher level version that goes into your deck. Every 3 turns, you'll reshuffle your deck and get access to higher level cards. So what's really cool about this is you're playing this tactical board game where you're playing creatures into lanes. They attack whatever's across from them. They attack the opponent. If there's nothing across from them, you're trying to reduce your opponent from 50 down to 0. And so there's this fun, pretty traditional trading cards, little like combat and strategy. But there's this, the leveling up thing is the real innovation. And that means there's no mana system like there is in Magic. There's no way you can just I can't play the cards in my hand. You can play any card in your hand you want on any turn. The difference is that the cards that are like good now maybe don't level as well. And the cards that are really not so good now can level up better. And so the strategy
you need to play those weak cards so that you can thrive in end game.
Exactly. And this lets us tell not only great gameplay, but also lets us tell great stories. So for example, one of the cards I love the most is a Scorchmane Dragon. And it starts off, level 1 is just an egg. I mean, it is a terrible, terrible card. And then level 2 is a whelp, which is pretty good. And level 3 is this giant fire-breathing monster that wipes the board, right? And so it creates this really cool moment where players can start to discover their decks, right? They can start to discover, oh, well, if I play these cards, then the deck plays out completely differently than this. Or if I see my opponent is playing a pretty aggressive game, then I might play to stall them, and I know that my late game is going to be better, or vice versa. And so that core game loop of just every turn you're going to draw 5 cards, you're going to alternate with your opponent playing 2 cards, combat happens, and then you'll cycle through your deck every couple turns, that and feel it level up. That's it. That's the heart of play. Anyone can pick it up. You don't have to, again, because it's a hybrid deck game, you don't have to go collect a dozen or dozens of different cards and try to chase after the single rare card that everybody wants, right? I wanted to avoid that with this game so badly. I wanted to say, look, you can't just copy or chase after the super rares. You're going to find the unique deck that's exciting for you. You shuffle it up and you play, and you get to learn and enjoy it as you go. And so it's a really unique play experience that then we built this whole awesome kind of shell around, which is, of course, as we mentioned, the 3 different pillars of play, and having the campaign mode and having online mode and having tournaments and all that stuff. But again, the core of the game is just, you could ignore all that. You could just play this basic experience. And if you like TCGs, if you like this type of game, I can guarantee you're going to enjoy it. And it's totally free to try, which is the other thing I love about a digital game like this, right? You can just play it for free and earn a bunch of stuff and, enjoy the game without ever dropping $1 on it, as opposed to, I grew up with tabletop card games and trading card games where, it was pretty expensive to play. Man. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's no joke.
Yeah. I mean, I think I like that a lot. Specifically what you just said about not having to chase those singles. Personally, I am not super into TCGs. My brother was a pretty high ranked Magic the Gathering player as well, 10 years ago. And I just never got into it. I've played probably 5 games of Magic in my entire life. Just wasn't my thing. I do get really into board games. You mentioned Gen Con. I've got a closet full of 70 board games in there that I play a lot. I get very deep into video games, but I get into some TCGs. I think and the reason I wanted to hammer on this point is 2 things. One is you mentioned hey, if you like trading card games, you're going to like this. And I'll just say, I try every game that pops up in Web3, and I had enough fun to not stop or pause your game for 2.5 hours. That doesn't happen very often in Web3 gaming right now. To me, as someone who doesn't play tons of TCGs, I had a blast playing your game. So that's a win. Even if you maybe aren't the traditional trading card guy, I think you guys have innovated enough that it's fun even for someone like me. But on the second point, there is one TCG I'm playing a bunch right now. I'm playing the heck out of Star Wars Unlimited at my local card shop. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm a big Star Wars nerd. These are all Star Wars books right here. But dude, the meta there sucks because it literally is everyone chasing the same 2 cards that cost $60 and you want them in your deck. Now you're spending almost $200 or so just to have a playable deck. That's super annoying. And I love that you guys have changed that because most trading card games devolve into that aspect.
Yeah. I've spent there's one way to look at my career, which I've spent the entire time trying to chase the magic of those first couple packs that I opened up, right? When I first experienced games, and I'm, date myself a little bit, but this is, kind of pre-major internet phase, right? So I'm opening up packs of cards and I'm seeing stuff I've never even heard of before. I've never even imagined could exist before. And I'm playing against my opponent and they're playing cards I couldn't even imagine exist before. And I have my custom super cool deck. Believe it or not, I actually won the US National Championships with my homebrew deck, back in the day. Nobody, that does not happen anymore. It's just not possible, right? The internet and again, you can't help it. You go check out the spoilers. You want to see what the best players are doing. People are streaming, and then everybody just coalesces around the same things. And so it just becomes within, even before the set releases, a lot of times.
Literally, with the current set in that game, it is the same 3 decks everyone runs.
Yeah, and that's just boring. I mean, honestly, it's the promise of trading card games was this idea that anything's possible. The game's constantly evolving. You get to customize and build your own thing, and this is what SolForge Fusion is designed to bring back to life. Every pack you open, no one in the world has ever opened that pack. No one in the world will ever see that set of cards in that way ever, and that's really exciting. And no one can, and you have to kind of modify your strategy. There might be specific card combinations you're trying to hunt for, but you have to build the specific deck that you have. Every deck is a one of one collectible and tradable, and that forces you to build a strategy that's unique to you. And I love that. I mean, again, there's a lot of different business cases one can make either way, but I have always succeeded the most when I just build the game that I want for me. And Richard and I had the same vision for this one. And so we were excited to bring it to life.
I want to hit on one point there that you have mentioned a few times. And then it keeps coming back to like, it's about the deck, not the specific card. I haven't seen, and then when we get into Web3, so this ties into the Web3 conversation. From my knowledge, every game that I have played that is a TCG in the Web3 space, you're trading cards specifically only. And you're still chasing those cards. And I actually haven't seen any of the Web3 games devolve into that yet, where it feels like, oh, you have to play the one card. The meta changes enough that we haven't been caught there. But you're still trading single cards. You guys are trading decks at that point. Is the deck itself an NFT, or is the individual card?
Correct. Yeah, the deck itself is an NFT, and as I mentioned, there you can still customize. So each to build a playable deck, you're taking functionally a half deck, right? And you shuffle two half decks together to play. So each half deck is its own NFT, and that's like a single faction. And a kind of what we call a Forgeborn, like your commander, your leader character. Cool. And then to customize and build a deck, you pick any different two of these faction decks, shuffle them together, pick which of the two Forgeborn you want to be your main character, and then you're ready to play. So it's very easy to get going and started, but it's that half deck kind of unit is the NFT, is the tradable item. And again, each one is a one of one. There will never be the same. We like to say there's more deck permutations than atoms in the universe.
And so when it comes to like rarities on that point, like definitely a part of the reason why, whether you're trading and collecting cards physically or you're in the NFT scene collecting things, a lot of it comes down to rarity. People want to hold the rarest item. And
yes.
So looking at rarity, how would you guys determine like if a deck becomes rare?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so it's actually something we have worked on. And I think that by the time this episode airs, this will be live, where we are giving decks a rarity score so you can see how rare it really is. So in the decks as they exist, we've actually, even in the physical decks, we printed on the, because remember, every physical deck that we create is digitally and can be scanned at the online account. We printed on there the number of how many of this particular card have ever been printed. And so you can see how rare a specific card is. And each card has different rarities and possibilities. But we wanted to make that easier for people to understand. And so we're adding a kind of rarity score to each deck, which tells you how rare the individual cards in it, compiled together, right? Exactly. So individual cards within a deck do have rarities. So there's legendary rares, there's heroic rares, there's regular rares, there's commons, and those show up just like you would expect from another TCG. But the deck, since the deck is the unit you collect, we wanted to make sure people could more easily understand, like, oh, how rare is this actual deck? And then that will help people sort of understand and get that, the excitement around chasing, oh my God, I got this super rare high-end deck. And you want that excitement. You want people to still be having that chase feeling and that collectible feeling.
Can a deck get more rare if it's woven into the storyline? You mentioned earlier how like I can actually evolve the lore of SolForge Fusion based on how I use my deck. If that deck becomes like one of those instrumental storyline lore altering decks, can the deck's rarity change?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, I mean, but, by definition, it is more rare and exclusive, right? I think there's maybe a dozen decks total in the world that have that trait right now. So they are super, super rare. We're not planning to incorporate that into the rarity score as we're calculating it. But it's not a bad idea. But it's weird because once you do that, it'd just be like, okay, well, this is now one of 12 total in the world. So it would all instantly become the most rarest thing of all time. So I think a lot of the stuff the community will evolve and know that, right? And so like we want to also tag like this deck won this world championship, and the decks can actually evolve and gain, like, go from bronze status to silver status to gold status depending upon how they perform in tournaments. And so that will also make them more rare, and people will chase those because those are not only are they rare, but they've proven that they're very good. Yeah, they've proven that they're good in tournaments, because rare and powerful or not necessarily the same thing, right? So people will chase that. And one of the things we even have already, fans have created their own ranking systems for decks and scores that they generate for decks. And that's the thing I love to encourage. Like, I don't want to be the one that tells you which deck is the most powerful. I want you to discover those things for yourselves. And we've built the algorithm so that, you know, every deck falls within a certain band of power, right? We made sure that, like, you're not going to get an algorithm that gives you, for example, like a zombie lord, but no zombies to pair with them, right? We make sure that every deck makes sense and every deck is fun to play out of the box. But obviously some are going to be more powerful than others, and some are going to combo with the collection you already have. And so that fun of chasing the like perfect combo and getting excited about both rarity and what strategies you want to implement is part of the joy of collecting in these kinds of games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I dig that. So, I mean, as a collector, there's going to be, maybe I can chase them specifically because of the rare counter. Maybe I can chase them specifically because it's more competitive. Maybe I can chase them specifically because it had lore impacts. There's actually different ways to collect as the game evolves. And I think that's going to always be a piece of an ETCG. Like, I know people that don't play the games at all. They just collect the cards and they put them in their binders or they display them somewhere. They have fun chasing these things down. And so that chase is actually going to grow. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and when I talked earlier about trying to build this community, you want to think about how you appeal to those collector types too, right? And what's going to make them excited and have things that they're in these moments where I can open up a pack and go, oh my God, this is super high rare and it's got 2 legendaries in it, and you know, or chase after the one that won the world championships last year to be able to hunt that deck down and be the one that
literal
owns it.
deck. Yeah,
the
you're
literal
not copying.
deck.
See, that's cool. You're not copying the deck anymore. You're actually getting that deck itself.
This is the deck. This is the champion deck. You know, it was played by this person on this date, and this is the only one in the world that's like that. Like, that's just super cool to me.
Yeah, that's fun. I want to get into the Web3 aspect of things, but before we do, I am curious. We've just talked about how you guys have like physical, like people are literally playing those physically. You mentioned that you can scan them and then put it digital for regular Web2, playing on Steam and whatnot, or you can get into the Web3 side of things. How do those, like specifically, how do those cross over with each other? And I think the question that I'm trying to wrap my brain around is the way that like physical play would work with leveling up cards. Like, so if I play a level 1, how does it become a level 3? Do I have a level 3 set aside in a side deck or something?
That's exactly right. So in the physical version of the game, when I play a level 1 card, I go grab the level 2 card from a side deck, put it in my discard pile. And when I play the level 2 card, I go grab the level 3 from the side deck, put it in my discard pile. And every 3 turns you shuffle. So there's much more manual work in the physical game. No joke around it, right? So but the gameplay is identical. And then and as I mentioned, you can scan those decks into the digital game. You also have digital native decks, of course, you can buy, right? You can buy in-app purchases, you can earn decks and unlock them for free just by playing the game. And by next year, we'll have the ability, we're hooking it up where you could just hit a like print by me now. If you have a digital deck and you want to print a physical version of it, you can print it and ship it to you. That's planned for 2025. And then in terms of so that's kind of getting the Web2 and tabletop world, how those link. And the way the Web3 world links is we have a token that we've airdropped throughout to our communities as well as to a lot of other communities. So people who are listening to this, we've airdropped it to, I think, over 180,000 Solana networks, a bunch of players of all of the other top games like that are out there, Parallels and Axie and others. So if you are listening to this and you play those games, you probably have an airdrop waiting for you if you can go and
sweet.
Go to SolForgeFusion.com and find out. So you can use that token to mint your decks. So if you have to have a deck in your collection. So it could have been one you bought native digitally, or it could be one that you scanned in from your physical account, and then you use the token to mint the deck, and then it becomes an NFT, and then you'll be able to trade it and do everything you would expect to be able to do with your own items, right? And that's sort of the exciting thing for me, because we already have that feature physically, right? I could take a physical deck and I could hand it to you and you can play with it and you can hand it back to me and I scan it back into my account and I'm ready to go. And so we're basically allowing you to do the exact same thing, where you can basically turn a deck into an NFT, unlock it from your account, sell it, trade it to somebody else, do whatever you want with it. They can attach it to their account and it's ready to play. And that's the kind of tier 1 integration of Web3. We have a lot more planned down the road, which we can talk about if we want. But that's at the basics. We're like, hey, we want to make this an opt-in for everybody. We want to give you the exact same functionality you would expect from any card game you had in your physical hands. We want your digital hands to have the exact same features and functions.
Man, that is really cool. I don't know that I've heard people talk about it, but I don't know that I've seen anybody yet in Web3 complete that crossover of like all of those things are in working order right now. Man, yeah, that's cool. You mentioned, I'm curious because I would wager that a large portion of everybody listening would be eligible for what you mentioned because they definitely play. I mean, we had Axie's founder on the last episode we posted was Axie's founder. Where do they find that? Is that just solforgefusion.com?
Yeah, go to solforgefusion.com. There'll be a link to be able to go to the Web3 aspects, which you can check to see if you have an eligible airdrop. We've airdropped that. We both found, a lot of addresses that already have access to these other games. You will have, almost certainly, you'll have an airdrop if you're playing one of these games, or if you're very active on Solana. We are trying to be very generous with this because that's sort of the whole point, right?
Get people playing the game.
Yeah, get people playing the game, right? Where the game is free, and we're giving you a bunch of free stuff to be able to try and access it and be a part of it. And that's I am banking an awful lot on the fact that I think we are one of the funnest games that's out there in Web3, period. I think, obviously, I'm biased. Yeah. I think we're one of the funnest games out there, period. But
I'm not biased. I've not been paid to say so, and I think I would agree.
Yeah, that's and so it's the kind of thing where whether you like TCGs or not, I think there's a lot here for you, and that experience of being able to play the game and enjoy a campaign, right? You don't have to jump right into the deep end and start battling against other people who, because we've had some players who've been out there playing since the original physical game release in October 2022. They are very good, so play in the campaign, learn, level up, get your experience in, and there's a ton of experience there and fun there. And then we have tournaments and very active Discord that people can participate in and join the community. And we have, again, tournaments that are meant to be more fun, like the storyline tournaments, for example, right? We actually, part of the fun of the storyline tournaments is we actually introduce a bunch of surprises and crazy new rules and like variations that happen as you unlock the lore and get part of it. So it's like, I want to make sure, even though my background is as, a pretty hyper competitive player, right? And I, to be one of the best in the world at a trading card game takes a lot of focus, and I want to appeal to those players, but I also want to make it clear, like, they are a very tiny part of the community. Like I'm here to have fun and enjoy and build relationships, right? Even myself, right, who made a living playing card games. It wasn't the money, and it wasn't even, frankly, the game that's what kept me in this. It was the community. It was my friends. It's these people who I have built relationships with over 25 years, many of whom I then, started my company with, and who I still like get to hang out with and meet up in places around the world today. Like, that's what I want to build. I mean, and just to get a little bit more personal here. I mean, I just got to have this experience. I just came back from Gen Con, and I have, a father and son coming up to me, and like they got to bond over playing my game Ascension. And his son wasn't even born when I launched Ascension, right? And I get to have these things where people build friendships. If we've had people get engaged over a game of Ascension, we actually made a custom card for them to get married. There's actually a video of this online. They recorded it and everything. It's awesome. And people have gotten tattoos of my characters. People get together and that kind of stuff is what lights me up. That's why I do what I do. And so we built SolForge to be kind of a big tent in that sense of the people. Some people, we and I'll just say, we also took a lot of heat, right? I mean, I don't know how much the Web3 community that listens to this knows, but the Web2 gaming community is pretty hostile to Web3, and so I had to put my own reputation on the line. We had to be very open and transparent with that community and say, look, here is why we're doing this. Here is what it means for you as a player. And we were very careful to be like, this isn't, every pillar of this game stands on its own. Like Web 1, Web 2 stands on its own. Web 3 stands on, I was going to say Web 1, but tabletop stands on its own.
Kind of Web 1, I guess.
Yeah. And then but they all support each other, and that the entire experience you get from everything together is a better experience. And that's why we're able to bring those communities over.
Yeah, man, your passion is intoxicating. I think this space could use more people that are just as excited about making games as you are. You mentioned specifically some of that heat that you guys have gotten. I saw your Steam reviews go from overwhelmingly positive to mixed. And I went through and scrolled through, and almost every review I could find that was negative and driving it towards mixed was specifically just, I hate that you're introducing NFTs. How do you guys deal with that when a huge portion of the player base fundamentally misunderstands the value proposition of crypto in a game?
Yeah. I think there's really two key principles for me, right? One is, be open and transparent. Like that's what we have a white kind of white paper Git book where we put out our whole vision for the game, which I'm happy to share the link for. I think I may have already shared it with you before, but that says, hey, not just this current phase of like, why is this helpful to you to be able to trade your decks and own your decks like you do your physical version, but also what is the long-term vision? How does this become more community owned? How do we use the token and the NFTs and the Web3 participation to make this game a better experience for everybody? So I'm very open about that. And we answered their questions, right? There are some things that are like vague fears that aren't really true. Like people are concerned about that it's destroying the environment, or they are like, there's some nefarious plot, or is this going to be a rug pull, right? But there's others that are legitimate. Like, hey, now what happens about security, right? If I'm in a traditional Web2 game and my stuff gets stolen, the company can just fix it for me. And if it's in a Web3 thing and my wallet gets stolen, it's a little different. And so we gave, here's how we're helping you with security. Here's how we handle these situations. And so there's a conversation to have with your community. And so that's piece one. And again, I'm having that conversation with my face up front and center, having done this for 25 years, where I'm like, hey, I'm not here to rug pull. I'm not here to like make a quick buck. If it's, and so I think that helped some, and just taking the heat and being upfront about it. And then the second piece, and this is honestly the most important piece, is show me the value, right? The reality is that people in Web2 have not seen the value that comes from Web3 yet. And there's been a lot more cases of pyramid schemes and games that are not great, that are just more about tokenomics than they are about games, or people who just try to shove NFTs into a game that doesn't make sense to have NFTs, then if you can show them, hey, here's the real value, here's why this is better for you, here's why, oh wow, I was playing this game and now all of a sudden my collection is worth a lot more because people are excited about it, or I have this ability to go hunt at these cool cards and unique decks that I couldn't find easily before, or I have the ability to play in tournaments for bigger prizes and be a part of the community and help to participate and decide the future of the game. Like there's a lot of things that are more powerful using the tools of Web3 than existed before, and it's just a matter of like the more you show people that and you let people have an easy on-ramp into that experience, I think that's going to be the conversion. And I'm a big believer, obviously I hope that SolForge is a huge part of making that transition. I believe it will be, but there's over the next couple of years, that transition will happen. It's just a matter of, making that process easier and showing people the value.
You mentioned that sentence, showing them the value proposition. Having not been like native to Web3 yourselves, what was the value that said, hey, we've got to build this game in Web3? There's something here fundamentally that is going to make the game experience better for players. What was that?
Well, I'll tell you the story that's probably the most painful story of my career to illustrate this. And it involves the first version of SolForge. So, I've been making games for a long time, but most of the games I've made have been physical games, right? And if I make a game like Ascension or whatever other game I've worked on, and then I stop printing it, right? And I stop making it, you still have it. It's physically in your collection. You got a bunch of games in your closet there that, like, whether the company makes more of those or does anything with it, you still have it. With the original version of SolForge, it was like a traditional Web2 game, right? It was one of the first in kind of mobile or whatever. And so we had a great community. We had a bunch of things happening. We had people who had huge collections and built their whole like identity in many cases around this game. And then after about 5 years or so of running it, we didn't have the resources to keep the servers going, and we had to take everything down. And their collections were gone in an instant. They like lost everything. And this was horrific. I mean, obviously for them, but for me too, right? I mean, I never wanted to like take this stuff away from people. And I realized that they didn't really own their stuff. They didn't really have access to their things. And when I saw what Web3 could allow over the long-term vision of not just like you own the NFTs, but we end up transferring server management to the community. We end up transferring all that stuff. Like that's what's part of our long-term roadmap, that it's like, no, this game exists with the community and can live forever. Not the advantage of Web3 is not just that I can digitally trade my stuff or that I could potentially make money or whatever. It's that like there is a real premise of true ownership of your digital objects, of the community, and of opportunities to participate in both the creation and reward for building a great game and a great community. And that to me is like what fired me up about Web3. And it's what the long-term vision of why I'm pushing so hard in this direction.
I love that. That is exactly the reason why we're here. I know I've used a similar example plenty of times with like when Warzone switched from Warzone 1 to Warzone 2 and just deleted everyone's stuff because the server went down. And I think there is a reality that as a player, dude, I've spent a lot of money on a lot of games that if the company just decided to press the off button, it's completely gone. Like it was all for nil at that point. And I think there is legitimate value behind the idea of ownership. Is that the only thing that you guys are using? Is it ownership of the decks, ownership of the cards, NFTs? Is there a token coming into play? What all is actually on chain?
Yes, so there is a token that is on chain. As I mentioned earlier, that's how you can generate NFTs. Is you spend you burn the token to be able to take decks that are in your collection and turn them into NFTs to be able to trade them. And we are also, the vast majority of this token, as I mentioned, where I think it's about 25% of it is being airdropped out to communities around the world. We have a portion of it that's already been airdropped. And then we're doing 2 more airdrop sessions that are going to be coming up. So we're just giving it away to give people free stuff to try the game. The majority of the largest pool is the community controlled pool. And that's the thing I'm most excited about, right? So the idea that the community can choose, okay, what types of events do we want to have? What types of new development do we want to reward? Do we want to reward different streamers? Do we want to have like prizes that are very top heavy or prizes that support different types of formats? That's the kind of stuff I think a community is in the best place to do it, right? I don't necessarily believe the community should be like making all the design decisions, because again, it's not easy to design a game, and I've been working on this for decades. But I do think that the community should take ownership of a lot of the aspects of what the community drives to going forward. There's a story around Magic the Gathering that's really illustrative. There's a format which is probably the most popular format right now called Commander, where players kind of have their own little commander. They play with larger decks and they play kind of multiplayer. And the Wizards of the Coast resisted that format forever. Like they did not want it. They didn't want to support it. And it was like this, it took years, like a decade of fan community support, like forcing it to happen before they would say, okay, we'll actually go ahead and support this, right? And here we can build a community and build a structure and a tokenomics incentives that says, okay, no, look here, go for it, right? These are the tournament organizers, and they're going to get and so building. I love designing games, and really at the heart of what I do when I design games is I create rules and incentives that encourage people to do things that are fun and enjoy themselves. And so in tokenomics design, I think about exactly the same way. We can build these rules and incentives that encourage a healthy, thriving, growing community. And again, my goal over the long term is that, the tech's not there yet, but being able to have, our servers and have the whole game sort of live in the community and live on chain. And so it's not just the decks, but everything that exists online and, on chain, and everything that exists in a way that players really do feel a sense of ownership and confidence that it's not going to go anywhere, and confidence that they are able to help shepherd it into that next phase of what it looks like and what the future of the game looks like.
I think the tech's getting close. I mean, I think about, you guys are on Solana. I mean, Genesis Go is a good example of someone in decentralized computing on Solana. I think they're more focused on storage right now, but then you look at guys like Akash that are full going after decentralized computing and everything being on chain. I think a year, 2 years, probably 2 years, we'll be there.
I agree with you. And that's exactly where our roadmap is. In my mind, I think it's 2 or 3 years, but whatever, we're in the same ballpark, right? And so I think this is very possible.
End of the next bull market, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredibly exciting. And so that's like a really big picture vision of like how we build. And to me, like, if I don't know if it's going too off the rails, but like I'm a true believer, like this is not just about building great game communities, but I think game communities are a testing ground to build great like global communities and networks. So we can accomplish not just fun games and connecting to each other, but like, hey, how do we solve massive world problems? How do we like build better connections?
Nation-state theory, man. I mean, that's a lot of the basis of Bitcoin and Ethereum originally, anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And so I believe, philosophically that this stuff makes sense, and it's stuff that we need, right? Having the ability to have like, verified trustless account changes and being able to allow communities to thrive. Like, man, trust is a very limited resource these days. It's a very tough thing. I don't know how much you're paying attention.
There's almost none out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so finding ways to secure trust and create healthy, vibrant communities that can then collectively do things that are fun and great, as well as do things that are hard and great, right? Being able to solve real world problems. I think we are in this window where, within the next decade, I think we can transform the entire world. And I think that while gaming may seem trivial, I think it's the perfect testing ground to explore how these kinds of incentives and how these different kinds of systems can work. And so that's a part of the seed of where I'm trying to plant and learn. And again, I don't have all the answers. I 100% do not. But I am very excited to be able to explore that and build that collaboratively with our community. And that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Phenomenal, man. I literally said in a conversation last week that the reason that I am so bullish on this idea of crypto gaming is really because it just proves the value of crypto. If this sector can be successful, I think it's probably the easiest one to prove the value of like, ooh, this can actually be successful in other areas now. I have one more question about tokenomics. While we're on that point of tokenomics, you mentioned that the community is having a huge amount of input into the tokenomics. What is the goal of the token itself? Like, is the goal to be the way that you meant the DEX? Is there a broader goal there? If so, like how do you keep, especially with community involvement, how do you keep it from falling to zero and becoming something that is just tossed to the wayside? And the reason I ask that is we've seen a lot of cool games in Web3 that should be really awesome, but people get hyper fixated on the speculation of the token, and then that ends up being the downfall of a project. And so I think, yeah, I would love to get your input on that.
Yeah, and that's where like I don't like to have that like conversation be the focus, right? I am not, obviously, there is a token that has value in the game. As people value the game and value the utility of that token, there's, it's reasonable that that token will be valuable. But I really think that if you focus too much on this speculation side of things, then you are taking your eye off the ball, right? The eye off the ball is the sustainable value of a great game and a great community. And so what we will do over time is, obviously the token, there's some amount of the token that's given away for free, and you want to avoid that becoming, kind of a dropping to zero. Right, but you have to burn the tokens in order to mint these NFT decks. You have to burn the tokens to actually make them useful, and so that helps to manage the supply. And again, I've built many game economies before. I built many economies.
This is essentially a game economy, right?
It's not. It's. I mean, the stakes are a little bigger, theory, right? But it is. It's like, okay, how many ways, and how much of the token is being given out, and how many ways and how much the token is being consumed, and how do you balance those things and make an economy that's healthy and extended? Like I've done this a lot. So it's not, the fact that you can like convert on an exchange into other currency forms and move them out, and you truly own it as opposed to being trapped into a walled garden, does have meaningful impacts. But this is the kind of thing that I have pretty high confidence we can build something that, the utility and amount being given away is something that's in balance in a way that is not runaway speculation or runaway to zero. But again, like I cannot emphasize enough, that is not my focus. Like my focus is to make sure that the like many people start with saying, okay, how do we build great tokenomics? And then what can we throw on there to like make people care or pretend to care, right? Whether it's a meme or a game or whatever, no, they're all tokenomics. And I'm all game, and I need the tokenomics to be there to support the best possible game and the best possible experience for the community, not the other way around. So that's like really important. And so, yeah, that's where I'm laser focused. I have a core belief that if you have a great game experience, you deliver real value to your community, and you make sure you take into account all of the different aspects of the community, not just the super rich people, not just the people who are super competitive, but everybody, you will have a healthy, thriving environment and a healthy, thriving economy and everything else.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, well said. I have another question we've talked about community, Web3 community. You guys have the track record proven when it comes to the TCG world. I think someone sees the name Justin Gary or Richard Garfield, and it's a pretty easy, like, okay, yeah, we'll look at what these guys are doing. The Web3 community definitely feels like it's its own little beast. Web3 gaming specifically. I think I did not come from Web3 gaming. I am not native to Web3 gaming. I've only been here for like 8 months or something, but it's definitely its own like little beast in the corner of the internet where it feels like maybe everybody knows everybody, and a lot of it is just rapport, and it happens 90% on Twitter or X now. How are you guys intending on breaking out into that community, or does that matter to you? Like if you're getting that player base, is that part of your guys' game plan?
Yeah, it does matter, right? I want to be able to reach these communities, and that's been one of the things. So first of all, while I've mentioned, I am, very much game first. Richard's, of course, game first. We do have people on our team and partners who are very much Web3 first, right? One of the co-creators of the Shapeshift, which eventually transitioned that into a DAO, is on our founding team. We have investment from Animoca Brands and Solana Foundation and a lot of other like deep Web3 folks. So we're not flying blind here, right? And in terms of how do you reach those communities and get traction there, part of that is obviously why we're having conversations like this with people like you. Like I want to be able to share my genuine enthusiasm and the excitement around the game. We're planning, to do AMAs and different, talks and available Twitter Spaces or X Spaces, whatever, and be able to kind of put it out there. Whatever they're calling them, I don't know. I want to. The short answer is show what we have, put myself out there, put the team out there to be able to see what we're doing and show that it's, it's a genuine passion and enthusiasm. And again, I welcome other channels and thoughts, right? If there are people that are listening to this saying, oh, hey, we'd love to have you guys on one of our spaces or one of our channels, or influencers or KOLs, what they call them in this space now, people who have,
I've never identified as that. I just like
I don't know, whatever, man. I know, but I mean, so there's the cynical way of like, oh, I just need an influencer here. But the reality is, I've had a lot of people, influencers, who have approached us and said, oh, here, pay me this and we'll do this. And I'm like, okay, like what I really want is people who are genuinely excited about what we're doing, and we will spread that because they're, it's in everybody's interest to do that. When you're excited, like games thrive not because an influencer tells you to play it or because you spent a bunch of money. It's because people are like, oh, this is awesome, dude, you should play this, right? Like that word of mouth, that organic kind of, people continue to spread and get excited about it. Like we are going to do, marketing bursts where obviously the airdrop is part of the marketing strategy. Lots of, interactions on X and Telegram and with these communities is part of the strategy. But a lot of it at the core is like, we're building something that's exciting enough that people want to tell their friends and get their friends to play.
Yep, exactly. Well said. You guys just, like at the time of recording, you are actively pushing out the full version of the game. Anyone that's been playing now has been playing essentially the beta version or a demo version. So the full version is being pushed out right now at the time of recording. And by the time this listens, people will have been playing for a week or so of the full version. What does the timeline look like? Line all of these things up for me. So you guys have an airdrop campaign underway that is being done a little bit differently. I would say less shilly than some of the current ones we're seeing in gaming. You have a pretty organic airdrop campaign happening. You have the full game releasing. You have Gen Con happening. You have tournaments happening. What is the roadmap timeline here of everything lining up?
Yeah, so obviously all of those features you mentioned are all, right now, which is pretty exciting. And then we're continuing to develop a lot of features. We're planning to move to mobile. So, having iOS and Android apps. We are launching both more but for 2025, as I mentioned, we'll have the ability to sort of go from digital back to physical and be able to order your own print decks. We have new content releases coming constantly. We released our last big set in June. We have another one that will be coming towards the end of the year. So, consistent content, new features for the game, new platforms to reach. As I mentioned, we will have new additional airdrops that will be coming, right? So this airdrop, taking a lot of people by surprise. Most people that are listening that are in the space are probably eligible, but if you've passed that window, there'll be another window that will come up. And so it's a continuous push there. And then, outside of that, like the features we know we're going to be adding and the platforms we know we're going to, this is part of the point of having an engaged community, right? You can join our Discord. You can be a part of saying, hey, of this roadmap thing. So I'd really love to see this develop, or we're adding in new storyline nodes and interactions and elite encounters in the campaign. We're adding tournament functionality where you could play you could like kind of functionally like draft what we call phantom decks, which are unique decks that only exist for a limited time, to be able to play in tournaments against people who maybe don't have the same collection size that you do. You now have to work within this smaller group. Like a lot of different aspects and features that we're building, in addition to just continuing new content, new tournaments, new events, pushing that forward, which is again the stuff that Richard and I know very, very well. And then if you're interested in more of the Web3 side roadmap, I encourage you to check out the Gitbook kind of white paper, which talks about a lot of things we talked about, where it's like, hey, how do we transfer this control to the community? How do we build things for having community controlled servers and on-chain game, and the ability to build what the future of the game and community and all communities looks like going forward.
Fantastic, man. I dig it. If people want to play right now, where should they go to play?
Yeah, so the game is available on Steam right now, completely for free. So just search for SolForge Fusion, or you can go to solforgefusion.com, and there's links there both to the Steam game, to our Discord, to everything, to the Web3 side to see if you're eligible for an airdrop. All of that stuff is available from solforgefusion.com, and you can play on Mac and PC right now, and mobile is coming soon.
And how much if I don't have an airdrop, say somehow I'm in this space and I don't qualify, what's the cost if I want to buy a starter deck? So again, the game is free.
Yeah, you can play the game. You can play the game completely for free. We have I think the best deals. We have a kind of initial account purchase you can spend for like $5. You can get 4 unique decks just for you. I think
that's actually minting them.
Yeah, well, so you'll get them into your account, and then to mint them, you'll have to use our SolForge token,
Yep.
the Web3 token. So you'll have, that if you didn't get an airdrop, then you'll have to buy it on an exchange or get it from somebody that already has it. So that's because
Cool.
we don't sell the token; we're just airdropping it.
Cool. Easy, man. Dude, I have really, really enjoyed this conversation. I think I was just looking at your guys' Twitter, and I am a little bit befuddled, is that a word? That you guys are at 916 followers. 2 of those are my accounts. I feel like, oh man, I feel like I just stumbled into the greatest gem that exists in Web3 gaming that people haven't found yet. I remember there was another game on Solana that I would say is probably my favorite game on Solana right now. Shooter wise, if I say shooter, you probably know who I'm talking about. That when we had them on the podcast, no one knew who they were.
Yep.
And then it felt like overnight. And I know it was an overnight success because they worked on it for years. But all of a sudden they blew up and became a huge thing. And now they're like getting the attention they deserve. And I think you guys are so close to getting the recognition you deserve. It's crazy that no one in this space is following you guys yet. And I think it's going to feel like an overnight success. And everyone's going to say, what the heck? Where did SolForge Fusion come from? This has been fantastic, man.
Yeah, this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed your passion and enthusiasm. I appreciate you actually playing the game and enjoying the game, as well as just having a deep conversation about not just what our game is, but what the future of gaming and Web3 looks like. I mean, we're both clearly very passionate about it, and I love talking about it. So thanks for creating the opportunity in the space.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hey, if you have enjoyed listening to Justin talk about SolForge Fusion, I will have links right down here that you can go play the game for free and see why I am loving it and why I have bought into their vision. You can find links right here, and we'll see you next time on 100X.